All right, today we are going to talk about complementary angles. Okay, so up at the top, the first two things are actually a little bit of review. You should be able to do this without me, but we will do it together also. So right here it says types of angles. And we talked about these last week, the day before Thanksgiving break. So here's an angle that's less than 90 degrees. So we would call that an acute angle. Here's an angle that's greater than 90 degrees. So we would call this an obtuse angle. Here's an angle, I should have drawn in the square because you should never assume, always look for that square. Here's an angle that's 90 degrees. So we call that a right angle. And then here's some new ones that we might not know, and we're going to touch on them today, and then we'll talk about them also tomorrow and on Thursday. So this right here, angles that are next to each other, so here's angle A and here's angle B, when they're next to each other and they share a common ray, those are called adjacent angles. Adjacent. They're neighboring angles. They share a common side, just like you and your neighbor share a common part of your yard. Okay, and then here I have A and B. These angles that are across from each other, they actually have a special name too. These are called vertical angles. And we're going to talk more about those later this week. What we're going to focus on today is adjacent angles and a lot of acute angles. Okay, how do I identify an angle? You can label this angle three ways. Remember, again, we talked about this the other day. So one way we can name an angle is just by using its vertex. So I could call this angle A. But if there's more than one angle, I would have to use 3 points to identify the angle. So I could call this BAC. So angle BAC. Remember, your vertex always has to be in the middle. The point where they create a point, that is your vertex. Or I could reverse the order. I could call it CAB. CAB. So what are complementary angles? Complementary angles are two angles that have a sum of 90 degrees. They're two angles that when you put them together, it forms a 90-degree angle. Because it takes two angles to form the 90-degree angle, the two angles must both be acute angles. They both must be less than 90 degrees, which means they both have to be acute. So, for example, this is really easy. These are just going to be yes or no answers. Tell whether each pair of angles are complementary or not. Okay, so I'm looking 66 and 34. So the easiest way to do this is by doing some simple addition. Okay, so I'm going to add these together. And when I add them together, I get 100. And again, remember, complementary angles always add up to 90 degrees. So I would say, no, that is not a set of complementary angles. I'm going to try it again, 52 and 38. So 52 and 38. Again, simple addition. Oh, 90. That sounds right, because remember, there are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. So I would say yes, 52 and 38 are complementary angles. Measure of angle E is 18, and the measure of angle F is 72. So I'm going to add them together and see what I get. Oh, I got 90, and remember, 90 degrees is a complementary angle. So again, I would write yes. Now here, 84 and 102. I actually don't even have to do the math for this because right here it says these two angles must both be acute angles. And I see 102. 102 is not acute. So I know this answer is going to be no. It's going to give me something greater than 90 degrees. So let's try some more on the back. This time, I'm going to give you one of the angles, and you have to tell me its complement. So instead of doing addition, we're actually going to do the opposite this time. I know complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. So if one of them is 77, let's figure out what the other one would be. So I would say 90 minus 77 equals, and that would give me its complement. That equals 23 degrees. Oh, Bad, Mrs. Newell. It's not 23. It's 13 degrees. Whoop. Bad math. Forgot tomorrow. Okay, let's try it again. So I have 90 minus 5. I've given you 5 degrees. So 90 minus 5, that would give you 85 degrees. 5 degrees and 85 degrees would be a set of complementary angles. Okay, let's try it again. 90 minus 30. 90 minus 30 is 60. So a 30-degree angle and a 60-degree angle would create a complementary angle of 90 degrees. They form a right angle. Okay, one more time. 90 minus 44. Okay, might be a good idea to write it like this, like I should have the first time. Okay, I'm going to borrow. And then I get 46 degrees. So 44-degree angle and a 46-degree angle would combine together to form a 90-degree angle. That means they're complementary. So it's been pretty easy so far. Now we're going to stretch it a little bit. So now we're going to go to some equation work just like we did in chapter 4. So it says set up an equation and solve to find the missing adjacent angle. Okay, remember, adjacent means it's a neighboring angle. It means they share a common side. So here they share this ray QS. They both have the ray QS as a side of their angle. So here it is a complementary angle. We know that this is going to form a 90-degree angle. So I would say, okay, 68 plus this angle right here. We don't know what it is. We're going to call it angle Y. I know that together they form a 90-degree angle because I've been told that they are a set of complementary angles. So here's my equation. I need to see this equation. Don't be lazy. I know some of you are going to go right to 90 minus 68, which is right. That's what you want to do mathematically, but I want to see the equation also. The equation is just as important to me. Okay, so I need to see this, and then I'm going to drop my line and solve. I see a positive 68, and the opposite of a positive 68 is a negative 68. So I'm left with y equals, I'm going to borrow here, and I get y equals 22, and then I should label it with the degree sign. So I know y is equal to 22 degrees. I set up an equation to solve that. Okay, again, I know some of you are going to want to skip the setup of the equation part. It's extremely important that you do that. Yes, we're doing easy ones now. They are progressively going to get harder. Okay, so again, here's a 90-degree angle. We were told that these are a set of complementary angles. So I know that this angle, x, plus this angle, 28, is going to equal 90 degrees. Okay, there's my equation. I set up my equation. When I take my quiz, this is worth a point, so I need to make sure I can do it. Now I'm going to drop my line and say, I want to get rid of that positive 28, and I do that by creating a negative 28, or subtract 28. So I'm left with x equals, I'm going to borrow. So now I know x equals 62 degrees. I now know that this angle in here is worth 62 degrees. Okay, so now we're going to push it a little bit further. So this one was easy because it was just two angles that were simply being added to form a 90-degree angle. Okay, now we're going to see that it's a little bit different. Okay, so it says find the value of x, then find the measure of the missing angles. Okay, so there's multiple things we need to do here. So here's a 90-degree angle. They share an adjacent side, or a side. That means they're adjacent angles. They're two angles that are complementary. They form a 90-degree angle. So I know that this angle, that's 22 degrees, plus this angle, that's worth 4x, together they form a 90-degree angle. Again, this angle, which is 22 degrees, plus this angle right here, which is 4x, go together to create the 90-degree angle that you see there. So here's my equation. Now I'm going to solve my equation just like I did in chapter 4. I'm going to drop my line, work away from the variable first, so I need to do this 22. I see a positive 22, and the opposite of a positive 22 is a negative 22. I'm going to subtract 22 away, and that leaves me 4x equals 90 minus 22. All right, let's figure that out. I'm going to borrow 8, or 10 minus 2 is 8. 8 minus 2 is 6. So I know 4x equals 68 degrees, but I want to know what just x is. It says find the value of x. All right, so the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. That leaves me x equals, well, let's do this, 68 divided by 4. 4 goes into 6 one time with 2 left over. Bring down the 8. 4 goes into 28 7 times with nothing left over. So I know x equals 17 degrees. Okay, so that's one part of the question. Figure out the value of x. Did it, 17 degrees. The second part says, then find the measure of the missing angles. So we want to know what the measure of this is right here. Okay, so I will say, if x is 17 and it says 4x, that means I need to multiply 17 times 4. And you're actually going to get the answer right here. Before you did your division, you had 68. So I know this is a 68 degree angle. So if this were a test, there's kind of like 3 parts to it. 1, can you write the equation? 2, can you solve it correctly to get x? And then 3, can you tell me the measure of the missing angle? Let's try it again. So I have 2 angles that form a 90 degree angle. So I know this angle plus this angle are going to create a 90 degree angle. So I know these are what we call complementary angles. So I'm going to say 49 plus this angle, which we know it as x plus 3, equals 90 degrees. All right, really, you don't need the parentheses there. They're not going to hurt anything, but you don't need them. Let's combine our like terms. So I'm going to combine my 49 and my positive 3. So 49 plus 3, that would give me 52. Plus x equals 90. Okay, drop my line because I need to solve for x. So I see a positive 52, and the opposite of a positive 52 is a negative 52. So I'm left with x over here, 90 minus 52. So 10 minus 2 is 8, and 8 minus 5 is 3. So I know x equals 38 degrees. Great, I've done the first part. I figured out that x is 38 degrees. Now I need to do the second part. I need to figure out this missing angle. So I'm going to say 38 plus 3 equals 41. So I believe that this angle is 41 degrees. Now I could always double check myself. If I think that one's 41 and this one given to me is 49, I should be able to add those 2 angles up and get 90, which in fact I do. So I know this is correct with it being 41. There are ways to check ourselves. Okay, let's try one more through the video, and then we'll work on some together on your packets that I gave you. Okay, so again, here's a 90 degree angle. There's 1, 2 angles that make up that 90 degree angle. There's one angle that it told us is 5x minus 8. Plus, there's this angle, which says it's 2x. So again, here's the first angle, 5x minus 8. Here's the second angle, 2x. And I know together they form a 90 degree angle. Okay, now we revert back to chapter 4. I'm going to combine my like terms. Remember to include your sign in front. So I see 5 plus 2 is 7x minus 8 equals 90. Now I'm going to drop my line and solve. Working away from the variable first, I need to get rid of this negative 8 or minus 8. And the opposite is plus 8 or positive 8. So I would be left with 7x equals 98. Then I'm going to say number and letter next to each other, that means multiplication, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to be left with x equals, right, 98 divided by 7. 7 goes into 9 one time with 2 left over. 7 goes into 28 4 times, and it goes in evenly. So I know x equals 14 degrees. All right, I've done the first step. Now it says I need to find the measure of the missing angles. So there's 2 missing angles that I need to find the measure of. Let's start with the easy one, 2x. So I know 2x would just be 2 times, we now said x is 14. So 2 times 14, or doubling 14, would give us 28 degrees. So I know this is 28 degrees. Okay, now this one is a little more complicated. It says 5 times x, which we now know x is 14, minus 8. So if I follow order of operations, I'm going to do 5 times 14 first. All right, 14 times 5. That would give me 70. So 70 minus 8, that gives me 62 degrees. So I know this one must then be 62 degrees. And again, I can check my answer. I thought one angle was 62. I think the other one is 28. If I add them together, they should form a 90-degree angle. And in fact, it does. So I must have solved it correctly. So again, on these 3 problems, it's not as simple as telling me what x is. I need to, if this was a test, I would want to see your equation. I would want to see you solve for x. And then I would want to see you use that x value to figure out the measure of the angles.